Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. Justin Floyd and Matthew Smith, I'm the CEO, and Matthew's the Head of Product Management. So I landed in New York a couple of days ago, and whilst I was on the flight, I picked up the latest copy of The Economist, and I read an article about how expensive it is to move cash around the world. And I realized when I was reading it that this was probably, it felt like living Groundhog Day, because I've read the same article over and over again for the last 5 years. And the focus around the current annual remittances that go around the world, $440 billion, are costing on average 10%. So if you take a migrant worker, for example, in a place like Dubai, that wants to send some money home back to India, it's actually costing them 10% of their salary to send that money back. And about 5 years ago, we've looked at that problem. We felt there's something just fundamentally wrong about that, and we set out to do something about it. So we hired and brought together the previous development team of a service called M-PESA. For those of you who haven't heard of it, it's been one of Africa's most successful mobile financial services. It's completely metamorphosized the way in which financial services and money in particular has moved across both across Kenya, but of course Africa as well. And today what we're going to do is we're going to show you RedCloud One. This is the essence of everything we have done over the last 5 years. And we're going to be releasing this at the end of October. And I'm very happy, Matthew, perhaps if you can start to just share some of the screens, some of the ideas behind it. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. So that's the macro level view, but let's move to the demo to see how RedCloud can actually impact transactions like Justin's just been talking about. So we have our transactions set up here, and this is where, for example, a consumer or an SME is ready to make a payment. Let's take the example of an international retailer. So we're making a cross-border transaction, and let's say the merchant is a coffee producer down in Mexico. Now, we're showing our white-labeled front end today, as you can see, but the transaction could equally be completed from a bank's mobile banking application or from their internet banking channel. As you can see, we're using an email address today to route the payments. The banks are able to actually select which unique identifier that they think they're able to offer to their customers. So that could be a cell phone number, that could be a Twitter account, anything that makes the payment easier. We've required the sender to re-enter their PIN, and the transaction can then be made. So thus far, pretty normal stuff. But let's take a closer look at the back end. How does RedCloud actually process that transaction from the consumer, say, here in New York, to the merchant down in Mexico? So what I'm showing on screen now is the RedCloud portal, and that's available to the bank, and this is where the management of the system actually takes place. So this is the coffee retailer's account, and as you can see from this top line, the latest entry point here, the transaction has actually already been processed. They've already received cleared funds. So that's because the RedCloud transaction engine is able to process payments in real time. There's no settlement delay whatsoever. So just to reiterate, we've seen a cross-border transaction where each party is able to send in their own currency, and now we're able to facilitate banks to process that payment in real time. So that's the kind of value that RedCloud can offer to banks today. But from the bank's perspective, they're going to want to know that those funds are guaranteed before they're happy to credit the recipient. So it's for that reason, as you can see on this screen, that we've set up an infrastructure that supports real-time bank reconciliation for both of the banks on either side of that transaction. But what about KYC, AML, and audit though? One of the strengths of RedCloud is that all transactions and identities and the internal management of the system is configurable to what the bank and their regulator requires. Those details are also monitored, recorded, and reported in real time. But payments shouldn't just be about the utility in moving funds from one place to another. It's for that reason that we've produced a very diverse, very broad range of pre-configured insights that are available not just to banks, but also to banks' customers. Customers like the merchant who's selling their coffee. The impact of this is that the whole ecosystem can start to use payments to drive business strategy. So today we've talked a lot about payments, but RedCloud's transaction engine actually covers the full breadth of consumer and SME financial services. One of its unique features is that it's able to treat every product as a transaction. So this means that we can support a loan disbursement or savings activity, or even the disbursement of, let's say, an insurance payout. So the ability to apply RedCloud across your product range really is an indication of how it's one of the most versatile transaction engines available on the market. But there's even more. You can also use RedCloud to innovate in a whole new way. Beyond processing transactions, we've developed our platform to be able to be used as an innovation tool, so new products can be brought to market in a matter of days. Using our configuration tool and our open APIs, you can create new transaction types across your product range without having to go to your technology developer in order to do that. And you can see our configuration tool just here. So let's say I want to set up a new loans transaction on my existing mobile banking interface. In order to make that feature available on the customer's front end, I can simply drag and drop that feature onto the front end interface. I'm able to configure its properties, so the interest rate, the repayment schedule, and so on, and I'm even able to determine the look and feel. So to sum up, with this tool, and in addition to the infrastructure that we've shown you, you're able to solve two problems: infrastructure and innovation.
So we have worked very closely with a number of central regulators, central banks around the globe. Please look out for us on the news very shortly. There's an awful lot of information coming out about us, and if you're here today and you can stop by our booth, we'd love to meet you. Thank you very much indeed for your time.